Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of Lightning Talks of Selenium Conference. And we're going to keep this hopefully a little bit better than yesterday's, in my opinion. And let's get started.
Hello everyone, I'm Arvind.
I'm Praveen.
We are from eBay. And we are here to share our experiences on how we went about automating across multi-screen. So what we did was few simple things. First, we felt the need for a simple fluent actions library that also handles polling. And we also went about and wrote an assertions library which has inbuilt polling as well. And then we also have a meaningful local test report for the tests to be analyzed. And then we also felt the need for robust automation design. And we also wanted to write and reuse the test that was written for mobile, for desktop web browsers onto mobile web browsers and also on native app. And then we, definitely we had localization, and then we also came up with something so that we can automate the UI even before it is built. And when everything is built and deployed, we were to go ahead and run the test. So this is just a snapshot of the simple actions library that we have. So it has access to browser, device, elements, keyboard, mouse, and touchscreen. So we could say actions.browser, and then we could do several things on the browser, and underneath all of these is the WebDriver API. So that's a sample of how the actions.devices work, and underneath is IPM. We also have iOS driver and Selenium. So based on run, if you want to switch the drivers, you could do that through command line or testng XML parameters as well. So that's for the elements. We could do several things, and within parents, and it will all take in buys and web elements as well. So wherever it takes buys, we could control polling. There's a default polling setup, and then we could also change it based on the needs. And that's just a quick snapshot of our assertion library, where we could assert on elements, element positions for responsive UI automation, where you could do relative positioning, saying this element is to the left of, below, and things like that. And just a snapshot of extensive assertion library that we have. And this is just a raw case, without using page objects, just how the actions and assertions work in tandem, where you can see going to the eBay.com page and then checking for elements presence, logo, search box, and things like that. All of these are by, and what's right, the string that you see is failure messages that would show up when these things are not available. So that's just a simple reporting that we have. Basically, clicking on any test will show us what the capability that was offered to run on it. If it's running on a grid, it would say exactly which node it ran on, things like that. And it also logs in all the actions in bold that you see, and all the past assertions are logged as green. And the failed assertions would be logged as red with screenshots and details to filebugs. So this is basically a soft assertion, so we could have bulk failures together, and if needed to, it can also be stopped wherever required. So this is a simple structure that we came up, where test and instantiate page objects, and every page object has multiple components in it. So we also had multiple components that make up the page. These can be accessed through the page objects. And locator files, we split the locators into different files for locator files so that we can maintain it easily. And we also had ways where there's DOM changes, right? When we have the desktop web, and then let's say, for example, sign-in button, and that may have a different class or ID on a mobile web. And likewise in native, how we locate changes. So we came up with a strategy where you can locate the same element by different strategies on different devices and experience. So that same test can be run across. And also we made the API to transform automatically to touch, transform the click events to touch when it is running on a native app, so that there's no rewrite of test cases wherever the functionality is same.
Also, we had a specific need. That need was to write tests faster, WTF. In order to address that, what we built was a utility called as code generator that would take a YAML file as an input and convert that to Java code. So the YAML file could prove as a contract between the front-end developer and the automation engineer with respect to the page design, and capture all the information related to it. So in this case, we have a page object, say search result page, with components result section and corresponding elements, say search results container, items, item title, and the respective information regarding how to locate that element. We also capture information regarding the interaction, say is element present, or element type, say clickable. So in this case, the element type clickable corresponds to, will automatically generate the methods click item title, is item title present, and get text from the item title. Also, it would generate the corresponding locators with the strategy in, say, result section locators.java. So this saves a lot of time in the sense that you could generate page objects and components in a matter of really seconds. Other goodies that we have in the framework is a RESTful client that helps you deal with RESTful web services and the corresponding assertion API to test the response. Also, we introduced the concept of validators to share and reuse tests by other teams as APIs so that there's no duplication of code by other teams. As far as the framework goes, we have plans to open source our framework Breeze by first week of October, and we would be glad to have your feedback on what you think about the framework, improvements, feature requests, etc. This is our contact information, so feel free to reach out. Arvind, he's the lead on this framework, and myself, Praveen. So feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Raj Vasikarla from Intuit. I'm a staff quality engineer working on QuickBooks Online, Intuit's flagship product. I just want to talk about our journey of functional testing using JavaScript. So the case for change on why we wanted to go that route was this. We had a product, QuickBooks Online, which was pretty much Java JSP shop. But a couple of years back, there was a huge transition where we were using a lot of UI frameworks. We are moving from JSPs to dojos and using the UI technologies. Before the transition, things were fine. Both the development and testing was done on the Java stack. So pretty much we are on the same stack. Our CI was running fine. But with this transition, there was a budding barrier that was coming up, and it was like too huge. Our development is on JavaScript stack. Our testing is on Java stack. There is no way we can leverage our code bases, and it was deviating a lot. So we wanted to get into a same stack and ensure that how can we achieve a solution where we have development and testing both using the similar tech stack. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. What we end up doing is, what are the tools and tech stacks our developers are using to build the UI stuff? We want to pick up that one and extend it and have our UI framework. So as I mentioned, we are like Node.js, Dojo, Grunt, NPM and Jenkins kind of thing for our developers. We extended that and added Selenium bindings, JavaScript Selenium bindings, and we integrated that with the intern.io unit testing framework. Using this, we came up with a functional testing suite or framework, which would look something like this. A core level framework is based upon all the stacks which I just mentioned, and we are pretty much using Sauce Labs and using DigDug Sauce Tunnel. We run all our tests on the third-party grid. At this level, this is very generic framework which gives us a base WebDriver object and pretty basic navigation mechanisms. But I wanted to abstract that and not have too much stuff in my base framework. We decided the base framework does very minimal stuff. A layer on top of that is very specific to the application which is consuming it. The page objects, the locators, the navigation, the utilities, the logging will go in this layer. And each team should not have too many page objects at that level. They can leverage the page objects from the common layer. So if I break it down, this would be a test layer, which is a placeholder for only tests. This is a layer where we have page objects, utilities, and this is a common framework core. So what does this resulted in? If you look at this, this is our production code base, the folder structure in our production code base. And we have our test co-located with our production code. So our developer code and our production code is pretty much on the same repository. We don't have two different Git repositories. Our Jenkins CI job is not pulling tests from one repo and building the application from the other repo. Everything is a single repo. The way we maintain that is we have grunt task where a specific task does a build and a specific task runs a functional or batch or smoke test. This is an example of how a test would look like. On the right-hand side, this one is a unit test where we have sign-on, where we mock, and we have a unit test in place. On the left-hand side, it is a functional test. We don't mock here. We actually instantiate a WebDriver, instantiate our page objects, and navigate through them. Looking at this, it was so easy for our developers to pitch in and start adding more tests. Earlier, our Java framework was pretty heavy, so the setup was tough, the Maven dependencies, and all that stuff was like the ramping up for developers were taking too much time. So even though in an agile environment, the developer has time to chime in and write some automation tests, that limitation was there. But with this, we don't have any limitations. There are no barriers for us. Within a Scrum team, we have stories for automation and development, and developers chime in and pick up automation tests and go ahead with that one. What benefits we saw with this one is we had more improved partnership with our dev counterparts. It's not like there is a story where only QA can work, and that was resulting in a better quality of the product. And there are cases where we were leveraging the dev code base for utilities, for patterns, for loggers. We were not reinventing the wheel. We were just picking up what the developers had, and we're going ahead with that one. So this is our journey, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Is this working?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, cool. Hey, everyone. I'm Mehdi Milani. This is my colleague, Lawrence. We're going to talk to you guys about... sorry, one sec. Where is it? We're going to talk to you about two libraries we open sourced, WebDriver Agent and FP Simulator Control. Cool. So about WebDriver Agent. Simply put, it's a WebDriver server for iOS. It's able to run across apps, so it has tons of functionality that you don't usually get from WebDriver servers on iOS right now. It's written entirely in Objective-C, which makes it really easy to debug for iOS engineers. And it also runs alongside the app, so it has a different kind of model of running. It's way faster than any other driver we have. So we use this at Facebook, and when we switched over, we actually found that our tests were failing because they expected there to be an implicit wait between commands. Because this was so much faster, our tests started failing. And there's a link as well to find it on GitHub. Simply put, WebDriver Agent is really just an interface for the simulator and to WebDriver interface. So it's sessionless. It doesn't have any idea of the current session. It just executes commands on whatever is there on the simulator. Here's a little diagram of how it works. So there's two sides here. The left side is your test app, and the right side is the simulator. So you can see in the simulator we have the main Facebook app, and we have WebDriver Agent, the smaller rectangle on the bottom left, and it's talking through UI automation, an Apple framework. But you can see there's literally no extra middleware. With most WebDriver implementations on iOS, there's like a JavaScript framework that has some like fake run loop that you kind of interact with, and that talks to instruments in the simulator. This is just straight to it. And showing like how concise the code is. So if you want to extend this, this is 3 WebDriver commands implemented using our framework. It's real simple, like you just straight up call the commands based on a route, which makes it way easier to debug for iOS engineers. One main elephant in the room, Apple released a framework called XCUI test, and it is like a good step forward for a lot of engineers, but why would you use this instead? So there's a few reasons. With WebDriver Agent and with WebDriver in general, you can do proper page objects, so you can have weighted conditions and have a much more stable testing experience. With WebDriver Agent, you can also do multi-app testing, so testing deep links between apps, which simply isn't possible with XCUI test. XCUI test is tied to this idea of a single app running and quitting, With ours, there's no idea of that. You can quit apps, you can restart them, you can open up different apps. It all works with WebDriver Agent. There's tons of missing features in XCUI test, like you can't foreground the app, you can't rotate the device, and also it's not open source, so you can't really extend it easily. One really cool thing with WebDriver Agent as well is because it implements a WebDriver server, you can just run it remotely on a machine and send commands to it. And also there's like real good simulator management. So XCUI test doesn't have this idea of a clean simulator, it just runs on whatever you have, which isn't really what we wanted. I'm passing over to Lawrence for simulator control.
Is this the right distance? Okay. Yeah, so I'm Lawrence Lomax. I work with Mehdi in Facebook in London, and I'm here to talk about FB Simulator Control. So what is FB Simulator Control? It's what we use to manage our simulators in essence. What it does give you beyond executing Xcode build directly or running tests through Xcode is the main benefit for us is that we can run multiple simulators at once. If you actually look at CPU load during a test, you'll notice that most of it's just idling. It's sitting, you know, a feed or a table view or something. It's not really taxing the CPU, and the host is presumably some kind of Mac, which is reasonably powerful. So you can scale up the number of simulators you run. In aggregate, the number of tests will go down. The runtime of tests will increase, but on aggregate, you'll get much faster runs. It also handles cleaning up of the simulator, installing apps. You can change the locale. You can get rid of the annoying location dialog by messing around with some of the p-lists that exist on the simulator. And it should be pretty extensible. In companion with WebDriver Agent, we can test force quitting the app. We can launch multiple other apps and switch, which, like we said before, just can't be done with XCUI testing. There's the URL, so if you want to check it out, go ahead. The main focus was preparing simulators for testing, but we soon found that once you get the process ID of the application and the simulator's running on the host, you can do quite a lot of interesting things. If you check out like a whole bunch of man pages that exist in Mac OS, there's some really interesting tools out there. So one example of this is it is actually kind of possible to detect a deadlock within the application by running sample. Sample's basically a command line utility that will sample the stacks of the running application and give you traces. And it'll tell you which ones are heavy and so on. So you can do some really interesting stuff there. LLDB is a command line app as well. You can do some stuff there. So the level of automation can go way beyond just running tests. So yeah, like I said, it's pretty versatile, and you can automate simulators generally rather than just for testing. So we're interested to see if there will be like any other kinds of testing, or maybe people aren't using this for testing at all. It could be interesting to see how people extend this. And it actually has a kind of actual API because it links with the frameworks that SimCuttle, which is a command line interface to simulator management that Apple has, and the frameworks that Xcode interfaces with. There's a whole lot of interesting stuff in there. So we can do things like inject environment variables into the application process. So there's like you can essentially perform code injection with dildy insert libraries, which is like a way of loading a dynamic library at runtime. So yeah, you can probably do some interesting stuff there as well. Yeah, thanks. Our contact details are there. So.
Hello, my name is Justin Nyson. I am a software engineer at Microsoft, formerly Wunderlist. I'm going to talk to you about mobile grid setup in 5 minutes. So the reason I got into mobile grid setup was really quickly. There's a bunch of whys, but it came down to I wanted to have all the metadata, all the information test data locally. I wanted to be able to troubleshoot any sources that could be messing up my tests or any point of failures. I wanted to have it all centralized where I could get to it. So what I'll demo real quickly is getting your connected device programmatically, launching Appium nodes programmatically, running your tests distributed, running the tests in parallel, and then feeding all the data into Allure. And then let's briefly look at the code. All right, so hopefully it's not too small. Let's see if I can increase it. So here we got a first method here. We grab all our devices with ADB, put it into an array. We can launch our Appium server through a method here, so we don't have to launch it separately. We start our grid hub. You could comment this out, you don't have to do it. We generate our node configs as a JSON file. And then we have one method to spawn off in parallel to launch all the nodes, depending on how many devices you have connected. So then we have our rig file, which then will basically break down and make it easy, short one-liners to run, whether we're going to run it parallel distributed or run it all in parallel. And then real quickly, here's our spec helper. So based on our environment number built into parallel gem, you can grab that and then figure out what device is connected to that thread. And then you pass that to connect to that device when the tests run. So let's go ahead and run it. Nope. So here it's launching the Appium, or it's launching the hub, and then it's launching the Appium nodes. They're going to connect. Takes a little bit. There it goes. And this one's, they're running in parallel. So this is so the parallel gem breaks off to your processes. So depending on what your computer has, this is a dual core. So you can spawn off to 4 threads. So obviously the more cores you have, the more threads you can spawn off. All right, so we'll just skip that. That was that. No, I missed one. Sorry. That one was distributed. This one's distributed. So obviously with anything with parallel, you could distribute your tests to run, depending on how many devices you connect, half the time or even less. All right, enough with that. So now we could, so we'll just generate the report real quick. Oh, geez. So here's our test we ran. So we know with each thread which device was connected to which thread, or which device was connected to each thread, and it's put into the test. So we've captured all like critical data, like our hub log, our Appium log, and then a screenshot of the failure. And you could expand on this easily. You could add video, you could add your standard out, standard error, or whatever information you want to put into your log, or sorry, into your report. So here's, I'll just give you a quick example of what we do at Wunderlist, or with our mobile grid setup. So here's the setup I have now. It's not all the devices connected, but this is what we usually run with. So it's just built in a way where, because we have to share the devices with the rest of development and the other engineers and designers. So if they need to take a device, they could pull it off, and then each time the test runs, it will reconnect and run with any devices that are there, and it gets all the information before it runs. That. Then again, you know, automation's great, parallel's great, but if you don't have reporting, it means nothing. So like here's another example where we have our screenshots. You got our Appium log. Logcat per test, which is key, I believe. And then video. So anyway, obviously the more data you add, the easier it is to debug your tests or your failures. So what are the challenges that I ran into with this? Using mobile devices, Android can be a little problematic where the ADB disconnects. Found a solution. It was challenging, but finally got past that. Random Wi-Fi disconnects with the Android devices. Not sure what's going on there. I'm still battling that one. Sometimes you just have bad devices. Every device is different, but some devices just act differently. Sometimes finding the documentation for setting up the grid is a little spread around, and I plan to help with that and update this after. And then finding examples for this was a little bit challenging based on your binding. So I'm a Ruby developer, obviously, and then finding Ruby examples for this exact example was a little bit challenge. So here's my information. All the examples I ran are on GitHub. So if you want to run them, they're all there, and you can run everything in parallel and distributed. So thank you.
All right, my name is Sean. I work at Lifeway in Nashville. I am an automation engineer. A couple years ago, my son started learning how to read, and that actually got me started thinking about readability in our automation tests. Okay, here's a typical, excuse me, thanks. Try this again. So here's a typical test that you might find on the internet. It's not a bad test, but it lends itself to fragment statements, choppy commands, and exposes the internals of the assertion to the reader. Another example uses dot notation. However, the problem is that the reader no longer knows where he or she is within the app. So what do we end up doing to that? We add comments. And we know comments is not the right thing to do. So I started thinking about a new approach, kind of a new design to try to see what I can come up with. One that was kind of flexible, easy to implement, and already uses the page objects that I already was using. And I came up with HPA. It's page objects, handlers, and assertions. And handlers are basically just road signs, place markers, just visual clues of where you are within your app. Page objects are the same as you would normally create them, except instead of returning a page object, you're going to return a handler instead. The assertion is kind of modeled after the page object. It reveals or reveals back to the test kind of like a service, but around assertions. Here's an example. As you can see, we continue with the notation. But this time we have the handlers in place. We can see those, and we kind of know where we are within our app as we drill through those, through the page objects. In addition, we have a single line assertion. Here's an example of a handler. It returns a corresponding page object. It calls the mechanism to verify that the page object is ready for use. In this example, it uses the get method. It could be isLoaded for you or whatever you use to get that ready. So it happens in the handler and not in your test. It kind of cleans that up. Example of a method that generates or that implements a handler. It's very simple, nothing new there. Assertions. Here we have a single method indicating the intent of the assertion, realizing there could be more than one assertion inside that method. Any questions? Done? Okay. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Good evening. Good evening. Glad to see you. I have a broader talk, like a philosophical talk about mastership. I want to share with you my vision about what it means to be a master. Let's look how it looks like a typical CV in IT. I mean, a typical CV looks like this. Quite a lot of different technologies. Do not read all of this. My point is that we really want to learn more technologies, more frameworks. We really want to learn different behavior-driven development, screenshots, visual testing, etc., etc., etc. The funny fact that it's probably a CV of a probably junior developer after probably 1 year of work experience. And as longer we work, as more we learn, as more we want to add to our CV, more and more lines of technologies. But my point is that it's basically wrong. Actually, if you learn more technologies, it doesn't make you a master. What actually does make you a master, let's look how the right CV looks like. In my ideal world, the ideal CV should look like this one. I can solve problems. This is actually what your employer waits from you. This is actually what your employer needs. You should come and solve all problems. Whatever language you use, whatever frameworks you use, whatever behavior-driven development or whatever development you use, just solve problems. Our problems that we people, we do rely too much on power of tools. We rely too much on power of frameworks. Let me quote my favorite movie actor, Leon Killer. Probably you know. Leon Killer said that rifle, you know what is rifle? This is a very powerful gun, like with laser targeting, which can kill people in many hundreds of meters, you know. And Leon says that rifle is actually weapon of beginner. The more professional we become, the more closer we get to the client. The less we rely, the more professional we become, the less we rely on power of weapons, on power of tools, and the more we rely on our own skills and feel of problem of client. And actually, the choice of master is, probably do you know? The choice of master is knife, the most simple and the most stable tool for work. Let me demonstrate my vision with a little video. I will show you right now one video. On this video, four men do exactly the same thing. One of them is Junior. Junior, it's me like many years ago. The second one is a little bit advanced. It's me later, a few years later. And the last ones are master and grandmaster. So let's view the video, it's a short video, and let's try to feel what is the difference between junior, advanced, and master. They do exactly the same thing. Let's try to feel what is the difference. So first of all is junior. Once more. This is the same junior, yeah? It's me many years ago. The next one, okay. The next one is me after a few years, a little bit advanced. The next one is, the next one is master, and probably grandmaster, or at least old master. So, do you feel what is the difference? Do masters succeed because they use more powerful tools? Not. Do masters succeed because they use more tools, or expensive tools, or some better hardware, or better process? No. Probably they can use some tools, but it's not the key factor. The key factor is that masters, probably you could feel it, master does less movements. Master avoids doing useless movements. Master raises less energy for doing the same job. Masters does his job so like it seems that it's very easy for him. It seems like he's just playing. It seems that it's not a hard job, he's just playing. The same is for us. Many of us think that mastership means that you can write a lot of code, a lot of complex frameworks, complex page objects, and so on. Actually, master is not the one who can write a lot of code, who can write complex code. I believe the master is one who can write as few code as possible, as few tests as possible, as simple tests as possible. This is not simple. Achieving simplicity is not simple. It's a hard, long way. So I wish all of us good luck on this way. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Evans. If you use the IE driver, you're using code that I worked on. And I wanted to take a quick opportunity to talk a little bit about some changes that are going to be upcoming in version support in the IE driver in the next little while. A little trip down memory lane. Microsoft ended support for IE6 and Windows XP on April 8th, 2014. That was well over a year ago. Accordingly, the IE driver dropped active support for IE6 a week later on April 15th of 2014. Now, by active support, what I meant by that was we're not actually doing any active development on it. It might still work if you tried to use it. But if it didn't and you submitted a bug that said this doesn't work in IE6, well, too bad, because I'm not going to fix it just for IE6. And that was as of April 14th. As of version 2.47 of the IE driver, it officially now no longer works with IE6. If you try to run it against IE6, it won't work at all. There's an API that we call that's IE7 and above, and it just can't do it anymore. So here's the new stuff. Microsoft will be ending support for non-current versions of IE on 12 January 2016. And that means 7 and 8 will no longer be supported by Microsoft. There is a blog post that explains exactly what the support matrix will be, but for Windows 7, Windows 8.1, Windows 8, 8.1, IE 11 is the only supported browser on those operating systems as of that date. So accordingly, the IE driver will no longer actively support IE 7 or IE 8. I'm going to give you a little bit more than a week this time to kind of migrate your stuff off. I'll give you 6 months plus a week. And I chose the 19th because that's actually my birthday, so I could remember what day I said we're not going to support IE 7 and 8 anymore in the IE driver. So you'll have time to migrate off, but at that point, if you have a problem and it only have repros in IE 7 or IE 8, too bad, I'm not fixing it just for that. I just wanted to let you guys know about that, and that's pretty much it. Upgrade your IE if you're not already doing it. That's my note. Oh wait, sorry, I got one more thing. Sorry, I forgot. While the IE driver as currently stands, it currently actually runs on Windows XP still. As of 19 July, it won't anymore. It will actually fail to launch when you try to launch IE driver server.exe on Windows XP as of 19 July. It just won't anymore. I'm hard coding that in. It will hard code and fail. Actually, it's a change in Visual Studio. There's a linker setting that if you compile it with a certain linker setting, it'll crash on Windows XP. So get off of XP. Quit using it. It's not supported anymore. And if you need to get a hold of me, there's my email, there's my Twitter handle. Follow me on Twitter. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me, or the IRC channel with the Selenium project. So that's it. I'm done.
Sir? Hello. Okay. I've wanted to use audio, but I'm looking for an audio jack. There it is. I'll do that. I don't know if that'll work. We'll find out. Okay. And then you need to see what I see. How do we do that? Sorry, folks. How are you doing? How's the conference? No, you gotta try harder. Okay, hold on. How's it going? Okay, everyone, repeat after me, but really loud as you can. Selenium Conference 2015, woohoo. Okay, here we go. Selenium Conference 2015! Okay, one more time, seriously. I will not scream it, you go. Here we go, ready, go. Exactly. Okay, that was good. Appreciate that. Okay, let's see. Will the things show up on the screen? Can you see that? All right. Let's do an audio check. Can you hear that?
Third,
Whoa.
we are doing everything.
Okay, we got the audio. I'm a big fan of lightning talks. Sometimes I think actually the most interesting stuff comes out of it. I will not saying that this is the most interesting thing, but thank you for, I love the lightning talk, so please in the future conferences, also especially if you don't get selected for a main conference talk, this is like my secret hack on all conferences I want to get into. If they have a lightning talk, still go, don't get disappointed. Go anyway and do your talk as a lightning talk. There's a theory that anything you can say in an hour, you can say in 5 minutes. I haven't started the clock yet. First time I gave this talk, it took me 90 minutes to get it through, and I'm starting the clock at 5 minutes, so I'm gonna do 90 minutes worth of stuff in 5 minutes. Here we go. Okay, so Healthcare.gov, tech surge. I'm Jason Huggins, follow me on Twitter. October 1st, the internet, dun-dun, like in Law & Order. Healthcare.gov launched. This is 2013, so quite a while ago now. And of course, no one really noticed actually it was completely horrible because the government shut down. So huge strategic flaw or tactic on the Republicans' part that basically the White House had 3 weeks to kind of scramble to figure out what to do with the website. But as of October 1st, it still sucked. And so the president basically got in the Rosa Garden and gave a little talk.
We can possibly do to get the websites working better, faster, sooner. We've got people working overtime, 24/7, to boost capacity and address the problems. Experts from some of America's top private sector tech companies, who, by the way, have seen things like this happen before, they want it to work. They're reaching out, they're offering to send help. We've had some of the best IT talent in the entire country join the team, and we're well into a tech surge to fix the problem. And we are confident that we will get all the problems fixed.
All right, applause, applause. Not me for me, for him, right? Okay, yes, what, president, what, huh? Tech surge, what the hell? Tech surge, right. So, of course, I was watching this on TV just like everybody else was, right? I was actually at home, heckling the president, just like everybody else was. So I was tempted to start a betting pool on how many self-inflicted digital disasters Obama will have to officially apologize for. That was 28th of October. And then, funny enough, later that night, in the secret math lab, which I call my basement, with all my 3D printers, I got an email from Paul Smith, who actually was one of the 4 people who were the tech surge, who were on site, who the president was talking about. And that was October 21st, and they were on site for a couple days there. So midnight, basically, Paul Smith emails me and basically says like, hey, I'm working on this high-profile website you may have heard of. We need help with automated testing, trying to get integration tests to the developers. Don't know what your situation is, but using help, start immediately, interested. So I was in my basement making robots and the Tapster stuff, and I actually went upstairs, woke up my wife, showed her my phone, and like, read this. Like, is this what I think it means? She's like, oh my God, like, right, yes, email him back. So, so I talked to him the next day. It turns out that the problem was they're trying to get releases out the door, and they had a 3-day manual testing process. Anytime they go on to get anything out, and all the contractors are pushing back saying there's nothing we can do, it's all manual testing. And so the tech surge folks were like, what can we do? Maybe we can go faster, maybe we automated testing. Anyway, so my whole reaction to this email was like, oh my God, oh my God. I also reached out to Harper Reed, who's the Obama's CTO, and said, hey, Paul Smith emailed me. He's like, you should go play, have fun, right? I specifically called him on the phone, said like, this might be like the BP oil spill. Should I do this? It's like, no, actually, no, you're with the tech search now, congratulations. Okay, great. So, oh my God, right? So, again, various things. I've only got like a minute and a half left, so I'm gonna fly through this, right? So I'm now just subtweeting the whole thing, right? Your life's on the line. Actually, this is a serious question. I actually ended up calling Jennifer Bevan, who I worked with on the Selenium farm at Google, and she was like, this is the one person I could trust that if, the fate of the country's on the line, who would you write a Selenium test with? And it was Jennifer. She couldn't do it though, so anyway, other story there, but couldn't go. Other subtweets here. Let's see, everything's okay or we're doomed, I'll let you know. This is the war room. That's Mikey Dickerson on the right, who's now the administrator of the United States Digital Service. But at the time, he was taking a leave of absence from Google as a site reliability engineer, and he was basically anointed now king of Healthcare.gov. He was the guy who brought it all together. And on the left there is Greg Gershman, who is a PIF Presidential Innovation Fellow, also one of the TechSurge guys who was there early on. But basically, this is the war room where everyone who was involved in the project that somehow got together twice a day, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And the only people who were allowed to speak were the people working on problems. No pontificating politicians were allowed to open their mouths. And they would only want to work on and what was basically going to doom them in the next 24 hours. That was what they had to work on. I've already almost got over my 5 minutes, but screw it. I'm hitting pause. Anyway, so this is really important. I'm going to get to a point here. So more subtweets. So this was actually walked out of Centers for Medicare and Medicaid and helped them use, I think, Selenium IDE and a bunch of stuff, testing their stuff. And like, oh my God, everyone in the world needs to learn JavaScript. It's really important. Anyway, this was a month in. Very sad day for me. It's like the 7 stages of grieving. Sometimes I joke my whole career is this one big adventure of avoiding programming in Java, but I finally could not avoid it. So, funny story, November 13th, this was actually when I was outside 2 weeks in. Here's another little video clip. Let's see if I can bring this up. Here we go.
About an hour and a half ago, I went on my iPad and got to Healthcare.gov, and I hit this button that says Create Account, and it doesn't go anywhere. And it just changes colors and does nothing. And so I reloaded on this, and for about an hour and a half, I've just occasionally hit that button. This is
So this is Representative James Lankford, who's now Senator Lankford from the wonderful state of Oklahoma. And he is now grilling in Darrell Iss's oversight committee Todd Parks, US CTO, who is actually our point of contact between the White House. Every day, Todd would go hang out with Barack and Joe and the rest of the team, and then tell them like, hey, we're fixing it, seriously. And then Todd would come and have dinner with us. And anyway, but Todd had to disappear for a week because he had to get prepped for the oversight committee. And apparently I heard the general thing is like, on a good day, it's like the 7th layer of hell, right? So anyway, so Todd is there, and James is out there just doing the thing. So we were joking afterwards, bug report via Congressional Oversight Committee, achievement unlocked. But what was crazy was what happened afterward, right? So again, kind of one of those like, what was that? Let's see if I can bring this up here. So there are 2 ways to create an account in Healthcare.gov. There is the thing that Representative Lankford did, and ironically, my wife, which is actually a key part of the story, everyone just goes and clicks the little middle button there. Starts there, you get into this little wizard where you select your state, and then you jump out and create an account. But everyone, guess what actually was tested? The alternative route, where you click log in, and then you get right up here on the top right corner, and then you get jumped to this screen, which is what he was showing on his laptop, and that will create a count button. If all the JavaScript, if there was 0 errors in the JavaScript, that would get inflated, that button would become clickable, and you would go on. But, so here's the thing. What was tested was clicking the login button and jumping straight there, but he went through the other workflow, which we found out 80% of America actually goes through. And so when we were looking at the analytics, it wasn't at 0, it was like it dropped down. So the funny thing was, after that, I called my wife, said, hey, do you see that? It was kind of crazy. She's like, oh yeah, I was able to replicate the issue too. And at that point, no one was able to replicate it. And so I was like, what did you do? What exactly did you do? I remember screaming into the phone. She got the repro test case. I went out, my computer did all the things and verified that it didn't work in every browser, basically. Also pulled out the Google Analytics and verified that actually all the browsers, anyway, it was a horrible thing. So I pulled the fire alarm and found out it was a JavaScript compile error, and that was blowing up the whole page. No pressure, but the president was giving a talk again about Healthcare.gov like within 12 hours. So this is midnight now, 12 hours later he's going to talk. And the problem was every time he ever mentioned the word Healthcare.gov, all the reporters of the world would go and hit the site. And so, yeah, anyway. So here is us in an undisclosed location in the DC area. That's Todd Park on the left, Gabriel Burt on the right, and we're watching the president talk about Healthcare.gov. What do you know? We fixed the bug, got a hot patch in, and we had a record enrollment day that day. More traffic got through, more accounts were created in that day than any other day. It's amazing when you actually let people click the account button and create accounts, it goes through, but there were so many horrible things that they weren't able to go. I need to go faster. All right, so one other crazy thing, out of this was a huge wake-up call, and I realized, well, one thing, I'm not on this cover, so yeah, no, start playing the wonderful violin. But let's see. One interesting quote here was, when they're trying to figure out what was going on, they literally, like, they took out their laptops and literally went on the site. I figured, like, from a monitoring point of view, this is ridiculous, right? So I kind of made it my mission to make sure, as long as I'm alive, as long as I'm on this project, I'm going to make sure that the create account button does not ever go down. And so I actually created an automated little Selenium script that would go in and take screenshots of going through the create account workflow. And also, so you know what's going on, I added these little subtitles here, so you can kind of, if you like it as an automated GIF, you could have this. And so my dream was, even though there's analytics everywhere, you would have this also on the monitoring board in the control room, where you have all of these animated GIFs for all the important workflows just on an automatic loop that were being compiled from production every minute. And so if this just went black or just didn't go, then you know something's wrong in production. And we didn't have this. I would love to have this. I would love someone to do this as a thing. But anyway, that was one of the things that I worked on. Other interesting things that kind of came out of this, a couple months later, again, the government's kind of learning their lesson. One thing that they rolled out is there's now US Digital Service. There's specifically a playbook. And the thing I'm most happy about is that, so Ryan Pachadsaram is Deputy CTO of America. He reached out to me and said, hey, if you were going to ask teams, you know, interesting questions, or what would you ask them to do or report on or whatever, you know, like, and I just wrote a very long missive about, like, hey, everyone should be writing automated tests. It's a big deal. Anyway, they came together with this playbook. Play number 10 is automated testing and deployments. Sadly, of course, no one had, you know, that's not codified anywhere. That they should have done that beforehand. But anyway, we have this checklist of asking questions of projects going forward. And the big, you know, victory for me here is, like, create, you know, automated tests. That's now something that the government asks projects, like, hey, are you doing that, right? So victory there. This playbook specifically is on GitHub. If you have comments and questions about how the government should be doing code, you can send a pull request and you know, see where that goes. Have a discussion about that. One other thing that I want to, again, totally over my time. Sorry, not sorry. Everyone, it is a huge problem that we can scoff and laugh and kick back and laugh at all the stupidity going on in DC. The problem is it becomes a self-fulfilling nightmare if we just basically only ever look at, you know, all the places where awesome tech are happening, and DC is like, forget that, right? It will stay horrible if all of us don't care. And so I would, I liked being plugged in. I can't do it. And so I think from now on, I'll just be trying to recruit other people. But I think you really should consider, I think also as a profession, I guess non-Americans, you can tune out for next minute, but there should be some kind of public service aspect to this. I would highly recommend that you seriously consider taking, like, a leave of absence for 6 months or a year or 2 years. They only want you for, like, these small period of time. And consider working with the US Digital Service or 18F. Those two organizations are now going out and trying to fix these problems. And this is not going to be, I think I wouldn't care so much if this was like a one-time fluke thing, but this is not going to be the last time the government makes a website. We've also have veterans dying because the Veterans Administration benefit system sucked, and it took 6 months to process their paperwork. And so that actually, there's some people working on that. And so, like, there's some really big scale, super important things that people are going to work on. And if we just drink the beers and wonderful coffee here and don't actually volunteer to help, the horrible government contractors are slurping up all of all the projects and making tons of money and doing a horrible job. We'll keep doing the same thing. So we need to kind of invade DC and help. Anyway, so if you have any questions about US Digital Service, 18F, or the tech surge, or all that kind of stuff, you can come talk to me. This is the logo for the War Room. That was the day that it was brought up there, 10/24/23, until it works, right? So anyway, thank you, and thanks for coming.